At 6:30 on a cold morning, an 83-year-old veteran stood outside the Army base he once served, holding a folded flag and a promise he made 50 years ago. He was denied entry. No one recognized his name. No one cared. He turned to leave, until a 4-star general showed up with 300 soldiers behind him. What happened next brought the entire base to a standstill. Before we dive in, tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? On a cold Thursday morning at Fort Croswell, the guards at Gate 3 received a quiet, respectful nod from an 83-year-old man in a faded olive jacket, holding a folded American flag and a worn duffel bag, the kind of bag used before nylon zippers before everything was made overseas. His name was Arthur Red Callahan, and 50 years ago, he'd saved the lives of 4 men during a jungle ambush in Laos that the government never officially admitted happened. Until recently, when declassified documents confirmed what some veterans had whispered about for decades, that there were heroes whose medals had been buried with paperwork. Red wasn't here for recognition. He wasn't here to stir trouble or demand apologies. He just wanted to step onto the base one last time to fulfill a promise he'd made in 1973 to his best friend, Sergeant Kenny Rhodes, who died in his arms on a mountainside soaked in blood and silence. Kenny had no family left. Only a brother who disappeared and a son who died young. So Red had promised, sworn even, that he'd someday return that blood-stained flag to a place where someone would honor it, where it wouldn't rot in a basement box. But what Red didn't know was that Fort Croswell had changed. The new commander, Lieutenant Colonel Brett Matheson, was known for tight security, no exceptions, and a zero-tolerance policy for unauthorized civilians on base, regardless of past affiliations. So when Red stepped up to the gate and politely asked if he could just deliver something to the chapel, the young guard radioed it in, and within minutes, Red found himself surrounded by 3 uniformed officers asking for ID, authorization, and escort clearance. "Sir, you're not on the approved access list," one officer said firmly. And when Red explained that he'd served with the 5th Special Forces Group, that his name might be in older files, the lieutenant shook his head. "That was then. This is now. We can't let you through." Red, trying to stay calm, reached into his bag slowly and pulled out the flag, folded tight, still stained, wrapped in plastic, and said, "I just wanted to leave this in good hands. I don't have much time left." A few soldiers walking by slowed down, noticing the tension. One of them, Private Daniels, saw the patch on Red's sleeve, tattered but still recognizable. Mac V. SOG. He froze. Everyone in Special Operations knew that patch. You didn't earn it in training. You earned it behind enemy lines where you weren't even supposed to be. Daniels whispered to his buddy, "That's a SOG vet." But the officers didn't care. "Sir, if you don't leave, we'll have to escort you off base property." That's when Red's hands trembled. Not out of fear, but from something deeper. Disbelief that after surviving ambushes, malaria, Agent Orange, and 50 years of silence, he was being denied entry not by enemies but by his own. A young MP stepped forward to escort him back toward the road, and Red, silent now, just nodded. "I'll walk." News travels fast on a base, faster when the incident is filmed. Private Daniels had recorded the entire exchange from a distance and, without asking permission, uploaded it to the base's secure chat thread. By 0710, the video had already reached the inbox of General Marcus Keating, who had just returned from a NATO briefing overseas. Keating, a Silver Star recipient and former Ranger, watched the footage in silence. Then he replayed it. Then again. His aide asked, "Sir?" Keating didn't answer. Instead, he stood up, grabbed his coat, and barked, "Get the convoy ready. I want every damn soldier in Dress A's outside that gate in 15 minutes. and bring the base band." "Sir?" The aide blinked. Are we deploying?" "We're welcoming a warrior," Keating growled. "Move." Meanwhile, Red was sitting on a wooden bench just outside the perimeter fence, holding the flag like a child grips a memory. He didn't cry. Red hadn't cried since '74, but he looked tired. Not in a weak way, in a way that said he'd seen too much, carried too much, and no longer had the strength to fight through one more door that should have always been open. Then came the sound, first faint, then unmistakable boots. Dozens, hundreds marching in rhythm. Red looked up to see a line of soldiers appearing in formation, led by General Keating himself, who marched through the open gate, flanked by senior officers, a color guard, and a full brass band already playing the opening bars of Taps. The MP who had turned Red away stood stiffly at attention, face pale. Keating walked straight to Red, eyes locked, then saluted with the kind of sharpness that doesn't fade with rank or age. "Sergeant Arthur Callahan," Keating said loudly, "on behalf of the United States Army, and every soldier who ever came home because you stayed behind, I welcome you back to Fort Croswell." Red stood slowly, saluted back, and whispered, "I don't have much time." "Sir," Keating gently placed a hand on Red's shoulder and said, "Then let's not waste a second of it." The gate stayed open as Red was escorted, not walked, but honored through the center of the base, every division lining the path saluting in silence. Young soldiers removed their caps. Veterans from the attached VA clinic stepped forward, recognizing him by face, by gait, by spirit. Red was led to the chapel where the flag was placed on the altar. A plaque quickly commissioned and installed before noon that read, "To those who carried the burden when no one was watching." By the time Red sat quietly in the chapel's front pew, his hands finally still, a reporter from the local station had arrived, tipped off by someone anonymous, and the story hit national syndication within hours. Social media erupted. Let him in trended worldwide. Military brass from across branches issued apologies. Keating appeared on national TV holding up Red's file. These men didn't ask for medals. They asked for meaning. By nightfall, Red had received formal clearance, honorary base status, and the first of 3 medals retroactively awarded by Congress. But what mattered most to Red wasn't the applause, the interviews, or the headlines. It was what happened later that evening, when a quiet knock came on his door at the base guest quarters. A young corporal stood there, eyes watery. "Sir, my father was in Laos. He never came back. But he wrote about a guy who carried him half a mile with shrapnel in his chest. Said he had red hair and a West Virginia accent. Was that you?" Red didn't speak. He just nodded and opened the door wider. They sat for hours, exchanging stories like family lost and found. The next morning, Red's room was quiet, peaceful, the kind of stillness that only comes after a mission is complete. He'd passed away in his sleep, flag folded by his bedside, duffel bag packed neatly. General Keating himself carried Red's casket, draped in the same flag that had once soaked up his best friend's final breath. At the funeral, every living member of the 5th Group who could travel stood present. No one needed to be told what he'd done. They already knew. They were alive because of it. The base renamed its Central Plaza Callahan Field, and every year since, on the same day, soldiers marched the perimeter at dawn, not in silence, but singing the ballad Red used to hum whenever the helicopters came. Not loud, not proud, just steady. Because heroes like Red don't ask for welcome. They earn it with blood, dust, and a folded flag that finally found its way home.